Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Seventh Rule. This is our version of the free-for-all, since, well, we kind of invented it, so I guess it's the only version of the free-for-all. But Melissa, myself, and CIRROC are here, of course. We are joined by Carrie Schwent, wearing a freaking amazing shirt, by the way, made by JJ Lendl. My live in Tokyo, is also wearing a freaking amazing hooded sweatshirt made by Melissa.com. Kinda. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is wearing a cool shirt too, but I can't see what it. There it is. Oh, it's an Uhura shirt made by Melissa as well. Matt Boardman, I don't know, but he's wearing a cool Under Armour hat. We like those. And Galdu Scott Jensen is here as well, wearing a shirt from Abyssinian Kiosk. Wow, we are underdressed here today. CIRROC and myself. Melissa's even got a great shirt from the Deep Space Nine documentary. All right, so
game up.
First things first, we had a couple things prepared for this segment. We're going to take you back all the way to 2019 when we first reviewed this episode. And a friend of ours was talking about it, and he said a little something like this. Let's see if we can pull that up. He said this.
This is so Star Trek. And I was like, wow, how did people miss that in that pilot? You know, they always say the first 2 years, but we came out of the gate with those elements.
So that was our beloved friend, Mr. Aron Eisenberg, the first time we talked about this episode back in 2019. And he kind of brought up the thought of, like, people were saying this didn't feel like Star Trek because they weren't going anywhere. And I'm sure you guys have all heard that before, but I don't know. CIRROC, did you hear that at 13, or did you only hear that kind of like later on?
I didn't hear the we're not Star Trek talk. I heard more of, like, it's dark.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's all I got. I remember the dark. It's a dark show. It's dark. And yeah, the set was dark when you compare it to Next Generation set, which was a lot brighter, and you could see the contrast in this episode when O'Brien is going back and forth, and you get to see the stylistic designs. That was one thing I noticed, that when Dukat came on the ship, how much his uniform or his outfit resembled the architecture of the station. So I said, that's really cool, because the same style of architect is in the wardrobe, and it is it matches. But no, I never heard that we weren't Star Trek, and I would even say that it seemed to be very Star Trek when I was watching this episode. It seemed to be, when they were talking about the wormholes and the prophets and these orbs, they went in, they started with the, Wolf 359 and the whole, taking you right into the action.
Man,
I felt there was a lot of Star Trek in this episode. And the other thing I wanted to say, and we didn't get to cover it, but was how great Sisko's performance was in this episode. Avery delivered like a masterful performance in this episode from start to finish. I really love the moments that, for example, when he first meets Kira, and he's like, she's like, I suppose you want the office. And he's like, I thought I'd say hello first, but yeah. He's like, yeah, I'll take the office. I thought it was it was just a great line. And I thought the scenes that he did opposite of Patrick Stewart, where Patrick Stewart says to him to the effect of something like, well, in the meantime, and Sisko interrupts him. Yeah. And he's like, in the meantime,
I was like, whoa, I don't want to be on the receiving end of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's saying, I'm going to follow my orders and carry out my duty, but he's also saying it like, Don't tell me what I'm going to be doing. So I love that. And, you know, there were certain things I had nitpicks with, which we can get into later, but for the most part, really, Avery's performance was just stand out. I love the moments with Jennifer Sisko when he kind of finds himself on the beach with the lemonade and he's like trying to figure out what's going on. And he gets in. He's like, wait a minute, I was standing here holding this, and then wait a minute, you're the girl that I love. This is the best. This is the best thing ever. I get to relive this moment.
Or no, maybe it wasn't a woohoo. Maybe it was an ow.
It was
I heard Jake doing an ow at one point too, when at the end of the episode, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it was fun to watch that. Those moments, I thought he delivered them really great. The moment where, you know, he's feeling like, I don't know what's going on, I got to figure this out. He showed the right emotions in when he's talking to the prophet aliens. You know, the way that he's talking with them, trying to explain something that's very hard to explain, like, you know, baseball is hard to explain, let alone the idea of time, right?
Right. I wrote greatest definition of baseball ever.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then the moment where he's crying and they keep saying, "Why do you live in this moment?" They keep saying that and bringing it back to that, the Jennifer Sisko dying moment, and they keep saying, "Living in this moment, you keep bringing us here." And he thinks they're bringing him. They're bringing him there, and they're like, "No, you're bringing us here." And I felt that was also the realization that he's living in that moment, and he won't let go of that. And him crying that out, I thought that was just like as good as it gets as far as a performance can go.
Yeah, some people wait a lifetime for a moment like this. It's a Whitney Houston thing. This magic moment, right? What is that, like Roy Orbison? What about the rest of you? Do you remember any of you, you know, just throw it out if you do. Do you remember any of that 1993 not Star Trek talk, or they're not going out into adventures?
Yeah, I still hear that now when I'm talking about
Same.
it with my friends.
Still?
Yeah. Same.
I smack them down now, though.
Yeah.
I've got enough ammo to fight back now, so.
Yeah.
Wow. I would think that now, like, that people have seen it, they go, okay, this is it. It's a different iteration of Star Trek. It's darkly lit. It's written a little bit more darkly. You know, it's about, as many of them said, it's about traveling inward rather than outward. But I mean, it's very much the ideals of Star Trek, and you know, it's got Cardassians.
Well, and the speech that Sisko gives to the prophets on the baseball diamond about we're not here to conquer you, we're here to learn and explore and coexist with you. That is so Star Trek. That's the epitome of Star Trek. And just because you can't see it superficially, you have to dig deeper. You know, it doesn't make it any less Star Trek.
Yeah, he's got that great quote in there too. It is the unknown that defines our existence.
Totally.
That just jumped right out at me when I was watching it again.
That's why everybody attributes baseball to Deep Space Nine. I love that. That should be a question we do one of these days, where it's like, baseball is the sport that we connect with Deep Space Nine. What sport do we connect with, like, you know, Voyager or Discovery? Discovery, I think it's taken Jello shots or something like that.
Curling.
Or beer pong.
You know what?
Matt Boardman, do you mean hurling, like as in like body function, or as in the Olympic sport?
Oh no.
Or baseball can also be a hurler. Anyway. Well, we do have another.
I was going to say really quick on the baseball tip though. I felt like if Deep Space Nine really, if I could go back and make one tiny adjustment to this episode, the adjustment I would make is I would put, instead of the random baseball player guy who was also a prophet, wormhole alien, I would have that guy be William Sadler. And
wow, deep cut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just playing it cool, like nothing's
just playing it
going
cool. You don't know, and then later on when you see it, you're like, wasn't he the guy in the baseball?
Mm-hmm.
That I would have thrown that in there as an extra little deep
This
cut.
dive
Chomping
just
on
got
some big
really
league
deep.
chew.
Yeah.
Strawberry flavor.
Wow.
We'll check out this other clip from when we first reviewed this episode back in May of 2019. Oh, wait. Let me make sure that we've got the sound connected just in case I'd missed that. Okay, here it is. A little something like this.
You live here.
You exist here.
You exist here.
That was the best. I thought the same thing. Best moment.
Yeah.
Right?
So we did kind of cover that a little bit, but I just thought it was fun to have. Right. Well, Melissa, you picked these out. What you wrote about this, your question was, do you still feel this way about this moment? How has the feeling of this moment changed or stayed the same? But we kind of covered a lot of that. What do you think, Melissa? You clearly have some thoughts on this.
Well, yeah. Well, because that moment has changed for me since the first watching of this episode and this watching, because now I definitely relate to where Sisko exists and why he exists there, because nothing in your past experience, nothing in his past experiences had prepared him for that moment of losing his spouse. So I could relate very, very much to him and his struggle and his pain. And it was an important moment. I don't know if it's the best moment, but it was definitely an important moment of the episode.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that, another point that we were kind of discussing, but this is Aaron talking about this a little bit more.
You just expressed how much potential you saw on the show. I remember hearing from fans when I started going to conventions, the opposite. It's not going anywhere. So what they saw is stuck on a station and not trekking to uncharted areas, right?
So they heard it. A lot of them heard it. And I'm sure Aaron, every time anybody said that, I'm sure Aaron didn't go, "Oh, that's an interesting opinion." And just I'm sure he set them straight. Melissa, I'm sure you were sitting at the table at conventions in the later years when he did do that.
Well, yeah, and he wouldn't set them straight in a mean-spirited way, but he would play with the person at first to say, "Oh, so why do you feel this way? Oh, really? That's interesting. But what about this, this, and this?" And start asking them questions and drilling them about why why they thought that way. And oftentimes they would go away, with a broader perspective or appreciation of Deep Space Nine. Not all of them have changed their minds because people are stubborn sometimes, but But yes, he was passionate about Deep Space Nine and hearing opinions from other people.
Mm-hmm.
What do they mean we don't go anywhere? We moved the ship. We moved the ship in this episode.
That's right. The station got their little six.
The whole station flies, man.
What were they thrusters?
Yeah, station thrusters. Yeah.
And they discovered the other side of the wormhole was the Gamma Quadrant. That's a huge trek.
70,000 light years, if I remember correctly,
right,
according to Mr. Sisko.
Yeah. I think it's always funny that, it's like there's some people who kind of like miss that whole message of what Star Trek really is about. And I mean, it's that exploration of the human equation. And whether you're on a station or you're on a starship, it's like those stories are about, the original series, they were about current events, and it was a way to make a social commentary through, I guess, a parable. And so, I mean, I can't think of anybody who did it better than Deep Space Nine. And I think it's fun to watch it now and to see, like, it's like, okay, this was stuff that was relevant back when the show was written, but it's like, oh my gosh, this stuff is still relevant today. I don't know. I think I think people associate Star Trek with moving along in a starship, but no, I mean, Deep Space Nine did a fantastic job of reviewing that human equation, just in a different setting.
And if we ever end up with sorry, go ahead, Mai.
I was going to say I agree with that entirely, and I think Gene Roddenberry set the pace, even with the first series, and right through, everybody carried on. All of the creators of the various series have followed on with that, because he saw, I think, Star Trek in one sense as a measure of whether or not we're actually ready to go out and see other people and meet other people. Have we evolved enough ourselves? And I think that Deep Space Nine, in the way that it examined things much more closely, interpersonally, different species, and so forth, was really drilling down on what Roddenberry was thinking about in the first place. So I really like that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let me add to that, Mai. I want to say, because the opening credits for The Next Generation, Patrick Stewart of Picard says, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. And
that's the Kirk version. Picard is slightly different. Instead of a 5-year mission, it's continuing mission, and
no one.
Yeah.
Okay, so they made changes, but it's still structurally the same principle. That is what Star Trek is about, essentially. That's what people who are talking about, what Deep Space Nine are not living up to. It's this idea of boldly going, I guess, or seeking out new life, right? Mm-hmm. And what I would say in contrast to that is, yeah, you could have a show where you keep running into new life every episode, and you meet Vulcans one day, and then you meet the Tellarites and the Vulcans, and just every time just keep meeting new life and new forms. But then you wouldn't really have a deep understanding of those cultures, those civilizations, those alien entities, right? And I feel like what we did on this show was get a deep dive into Bajorans, a deep dive into the Ferengi, a deep dive into the Cardassians and the Klingons, and just deep diving into these new life that we've already met, the new civilizations we've met. So I think getting to know them is an exploration. That is the exploration. It doesn't necessarily have to be, new aliens.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This show has more of an evolution of humanity through its interactions with these various species than almost any other. I think probably more than any other series by a wide margin, in fact.
Mm-hmm. Now, real quick before we hop over to our next segment, we forgot. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score. Unless you already checked, because we did do a part of the dive. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to say 8.1 is my guess.
Anybody else have any guesses that hasn't checked recently?
I don't know. I don't want to think I want to know. It's a 10.
Yeah, 7.5. That's a little rough for
really?
such a great, of an objectively good pilot, I would think.
Wow.
Also,
for a while.
You thought what?
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought this is, for the longest time, this was probably regarded as one of the best pilots for a Star Trek series.
It is. It won last year in the 2022 Lappy Awards, Best Star Trek Pilot. Deep Space Nine won that. We did have 2 non-appearance mentions that I caught. Melissa's already nodding. Who are they?
Keiko and Joseph Sisko.
Yes. Excellent.
I was
even though they may not have even had Joseph Sisko cast yet.
No, but what,
And
when
he
did
made
they
him
mention
sound like
him?
he was dead too. My father
that
was.
was-
Said he was.
You know, I forgot that was my
He was
nitpick
a-
with my nitpick tie, which was that he said, Captain Sisko said, my dad was a famous chef, or he said was.
famous chef.
But he
Yeah.
But
very
maybe
clearly
he's
said
not-
was.
Right, but maybe he's not in that circle anymore as far as
That's
being
the head
world
canon that we
famous.
have to work with. But it was for
Probably
the
because they
aubergine
got Brock
stew,
Peters, though.
Right.
which is
Brock Peters to change
eggplant.
continuity.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay,
Well,
cool.
what happened was the world got larger. And so he was no longer world famous once they expanded the world.
Mhm.
Oh.
That's all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
See?
That's
All right,
what
let's
I
take a quick break and hop over to the other side on the seventh rule.